September 1, 1939. The invasion of Poland was the trigger for World War II in Europe and signified the beginning of an era in which tens of millions of people would die. For 6 long years, Europe would be thrown into a maelstrom of chaos and destruction as the Germans and their allies expanded the Third Reich, humbling nations before them, subjecting the continent to the crushing authoritarian jackboot of Nazism. Tens of millions of people would die, not just on the front lines, but from mass executions and genocide as the Nazis stamped their rule over Europe, and Poland was the first to feel this onslaught. Hitler came to power in 1933, and for the 12 years of Nazi rule in Germany, the country followed an irredentist policy, reforming the glory of the Second Reich by annexing neighboring territories in its bid to rebuild an empire that was destroyed by the terms of the Treaty of Versailles, which ended the First World War. Annexation of neighboring territories was done under the justification of uniting German speakers into one country. Ethnic Germans living in Poland, however, formed a small minority of the country's population, and instead, the Nazis claimed the ethnic Germans living in Poland were subjected to persecution. In the west of Poland, the Polish corridor was land that had been taken away from Germany as a result of the Treaty of Versailles, and it separated Germany from the free city of Danzig, where Germans formed a majority. Danzig was an independent city-state formed in 1920 and was under the protection of the League of Nations, with special rights given to Poland as it was the only port in the Polish corridor. Germany began making demands of Poland on the subject of Danzig. Hitler wanted to link German territory with Danzig, and he proposed the construction of an extraterritorial highway between Germany, through Polish territory, and into Danzig and East Prussia, which was German exclave. The Polish refused, believing that any concessions they made would weaken their position and give the Germans increased power over their nation. Fearing the growing power of a belligerent Germany, Poland signed a military alliance with France and the United Kingdom in March 1939, hoping that it would deter Hitler from attempting any military action. On the nights of August 31, the Germans carried out a series of false flag incidents along the Polish border, including the infamous Gliwice incident, in which SS operatives dressed as Poles seized the Gliwice radio station on German territory and broadcast anti-German messages. The following day, Poland was invaded. As the dawn broke on September 1, 1939, Germany launched a surprise invasion of Poland. The main thrusts came from German-held East Prussia in the north, Silesia and Slovakia in the southwest, and from the northwest, with much of Poland's army on the German border expecting an attack directly from the west. The Polish were caught completely off guard and these armies were encircled. From the very beginning, the Polish were overwhelmed on all fronts and every department. Theoretically, they had 1 million men to resist the invasion, a not insubstantial number, but the Germans had mustered more than 60 divisions, over 1.5 million, with hundreds of thousands more to follow, supported by 2,000 tanks, 900 bombers, and 400 fighters planes. The Poles planned to hold up the Germans' armies in the west in order to buy time for the UK and France to mobilize and send troops to aid their ally. Polish hopes, however, were dashed. The UK and France declared war on Germany on September 3, but neither of these countries sent troops to aid the Poles, and to make matters worse, the Soviets opened another front and invaded Poland from the east. In the first days of invasion, German propaganda claimed that the Polish Air Force had been destroyed on the ground. This was unsurprisingly a lie. The Poles had been caught unaware, mainly due to the direction of the German invasion and not simply the fact that happened. The Polish had spread their air force out in expectation of conflict and were able to launch a spirited defense in the air. The Polish, however, were outnumbered and were using vastly inferior aircraft. The Polish were well trained, but it was not enough, and the Germans achieved air superiority within a very short period of time. France and the UK declared war, but they felt that a few more months of military buildup were necessary before they could send any effective relief to the beleaguered Poles. They were expected the Poles to be able to hold out until then. As for the speed of the German campaign, it shocked everybody involved. Even the Germans were impressed with the efficacy of their new doctrine. Meanwhile, Warsaw had been suffering aerial bombardments since the beginning of the war. The most significant battle during this period of the war was the Battle of Bzura, which was lasted from September 9 to September 19. The German Eighth Army had advanced rapidly eastwards and was directly west Warsaw. With the rapid advance, the Eighth Army's flanks were open, and the Polish seized the opportunity to counterattack. They achieved temporary success but were finally overwhelmed and defeated in large part due to uncontested superiority of the Luftwaffe. On September 17, the Soviets invaded Poland from the east. This move was completely unexpected by everyone except the Germans and the Soviets themselves, who had created the plan to do so when they signed the Non-Aggression Act in late August 1939. By the time of the Soviet invasion, the Polish forces had already been fragmented and operated without coordination. By the time of the Soviet invasion, the Polish forces had already been fragmented and operated without coordination. The day after the Soviet launched their invasion, the Polish government fled the country. Polish troops were also ordered to flee the country and reorganize in France. They were also ordered to fall back from the Soviet advance and not engage the enemy. It was quite clear that the war was completely lost, and the Polish government tried to save what they could of the armed forces. Nevertheless, the fighting continued. Just west of Warsaw, the city of Lwów today Lviv fell on September 22. Warsaw held out for a few days longer, with Polish units completely surrounded, offering a resilient defense. The battle, however, was a foregone conclusion, and the city officially surrendered on October 28.